technical seminars are an Intertech production. For instructor-led .NET, Java, and XML courses, visit us at www.intertech.com.
Once the bundle is located, the next thing it's going to do is try to find the key that you submit. And it's going to do basically the same thing that happened with the resource bundles. If it can't find a key in that bundle, then it's going to go into less specific bundles to find the key. So again, your bundle contained a variant, it'll try to look for one where the variant is dropped. If it still can't find the key, then it'll drop the country and look for another resource bundle. If it's not there, it'll look for the language until you get to that base default base name property file with no locale information. So let's see how well you understand this concept. Got a little quiz here, and we'll look at the answers when we're finished. So what you're seeing below are 4 different property files that I've created. The base name of the property file is going to be Resource Bundle Quiz, and of the 4, I have one that's localized in English, one that's localized in English United States, one that's localized in French, and then just a default properties files if it can't find anything else. So that we know which property file is actually displaying the name, I put a little message next to it so I could see which file it's grabbed from. So in the base, it says username equals JSON, parenthetical is base. In French, the parenthetical is FR, etc. So what I'm going to describe is what the locale is of the object you're passing in to the resource bundle, and then what the default locale of the system is, and what key you're trying to locate. So in the first question is your locale is French, the default locale is English, and we're looking for a key of password. What is going to be printed when I pass in that key password? Second question, your locale is English. The default locale of your system is French. And again, we're looking for the key password. What string will be printed out when I print out password? Number 3, locale is going to be Japanese. And the default locale of the system is French Canada. The key is username. What string will be printed out? Number 4, your locale is French, Canada. The default locale of the system is English, US, and the key is username. What message will be printed out? Number 5, our final question. Your locale is English, EN. Your default locale is French, and the key is state. What's going to be printed out? Okay, let's run a program that will run each of these cases and see what our answers are. Okay, so I just made a really simple program that's going to create a locale object as we saw earlier. I'm creating the locale object that I'm going to pass in, and I'm also setting the default locale of the system, and then seeing what answer comes back. So let's run this. And I'll expand my console so we can take a look at each answer. Jumping up to the first one. The first one was pretty easy and obvious. So I looked up in French and looked for the key password. Since it didn't have it, it went all the way down to the default base bundle and found my pass. Second one was where my locale was English and the default locale was French. Again, the key was password, and since there wasn't anything in the English resource bundle for password, it went all the way down to the default and grabbed my pass as well. Third one is I submitted a locale that wasn't even created, Japanese. So since that wasn't able to be found, it went and looked and found our default locale of the system to be French Canada. And it found a resource bundle that was just French, and it was able to find that key username inside of there. The fourth was my locale was French Canada. The default locale was English US. And here I passed in username. Again, found it inside of that French resource bundle. The fifth one is probably the one, if you got any wrong, that would have tricked you. And the fifth is, you can see it actually threw an exception, a missing resource exception. What happened is that even though there was the key state inside of my English US bundle, it's not, the resource bundle is not going to be, it's not going to start looking in more specific resource bundles for it. So really it's going to start with the English resource bundle, and if it's not there, then it's going to look in the default locale and try to find that. Even though English is part of English US, again, that's too specific. It's not going to jump up to English US. My locale would have been needed to be English US to be able to grab that key state. So it really starts at the locale that you submit, or the default locale of the system, and becomes more general when it starts looking for the specific resource bundle and the key. So moving on from the topic of resource bundles, there's some other things we need to consider when we're going through the internationalization process. And one that's a little more tricky is in terms of collation. So when we're sorting and dealing with searching, how do we do this in a regional specific way? What do we have to consider? Well, first of all, there are different regional and language rules in terms of how you'd be able to sort. Whether an accent, for example, on a letter should mean that that letter is sorted differently if it's at the end of the word or if it's at the middle of the word. There's also multi-character contractions and single-character extractions. And what that means is in some languages I can have, for example, 2 letters when I write the word in lowercase. But if I write that same word in uppercase, then it becomes 1 letter. So when I'm doing my searching and my sorting, what does that mean in terms of how it's going to be placed? And the opposite of that is single character extraction. So where I have 1 character that when it changes case, maybe it becomes 2 characters. Sometimes also you'll see that when you're doing sorting, 2 characters are really considered to be 1 character. In Czech, I believe there's CH, if I'm remembering correctly. It's 2 different letters, but when they appear together, they're sorted as if they were 1 letter. So we use a collator to get around this, so we don't have to branch our logic in our code. We simply use a collator when we want to do our searching sorting. And so the collator strength for the sorting is able to be initialized with a basically how strict do you want it to be. And the list from least restrictive to most restrictive is primary, secondary, tertiary, and identical. Now, the default strength is set to tertiary, and what does that mean? Like, how does, how much more strict is tertiary from, say, secondary, or how, least restrictive is primary compared to identical? And it's really going to just depend on the locale, what those specific strengths mean. So you just sort of like consider it, either you can get detailed into the language that you're supporting and make sure that, hey, if it's French, then I want to only support secondary, and if it's German, then I want to do identical. I mean, you can make those decisions as well. You can also just say like, well, I want my collator strength to be identical, so it's as strict as possible for every language. But really what that means is going to be dependent on the locale. And
for more free learning resources and to see the latest lineup of our instructor-led .NET, Java, and XML courses, visit us at www.intertech.com.